The massive chamber stretched for kilometers in every direction, filled with beings from across the galaxy. Some floated in anti-gravity fields, others stood on platforms adjusted to their gravity needs, and a few existed as pure energy contained in crystalline vessels. This was the Galactic Council, and today they were meeting to decide the fate of a new species. Ambassador James Carter stood in the center of the circular platform. His plain blue uniform looked simple compared to the elaborate garments and biological displays of the alien delegates around him. He was the first human to ever address the council, and he could feel 10,000 eyes watching him. "Another primitive species," whispered Councillor Vex to his neighbor. His reptilian face showed clear disdain. "Look at them. No scales, no natural weapons, no telepathic abilities. What protection could they possibly need from us?" The other councillors murmured in agreement. The application before them listed the species as coming from a planet called Earth in a remote sector. The preliminary scans showed nothing impressive. Short lifespans, fragile bodies, and a violent history of constant warfare among their own kind. "They have been spacefaring for only 300 years, another councillor noted. "Most species take 2,000 years to develop stable interstellar travel. These humans rushed into space like children." James kept his expression neutral. He had expected this reception. Earth had prepared him for mockery and dismissal. What he did not expect was what happened next. The archivist suddenly began to pulse with strange colors. These ancient crystalline beings maintained all galactic records going back millions of years. They rarely showed emotion, but now their forms flickered wildly with what could only be described as alarm. The eldest archivist, Luminos, spoke in a voice that crackled through the translation systems. "Wait. Stop the proceedings immediately." The entire chamber fell silent. The archivists never interrupted council sessions. Luminos's crystalline body glowed brighter as he accessed deep storage systems. "These coordinates. The star system listed in the application. I recognize them from old records. Very old records." "How old?" demanded the council speaker, leaning forward. 50 million years, Luminos replied. "From the time of the progenitors." A wave of shock rippled through the chamber. The progenitors were the first galactic civilization, the mysterious founders who had vanished eons ago. They had left behind technology and warnings, but very little else. Any planet marked in their records was significant. James felt his heart race but kept his face calm. Earth scientists had discovered the ancient beacon near their solar system decades ago, but they had never been able to translate it fully. Luminos pulled up holographic displays covered in ancient symbols that slowly translated into modern galactic script. The progenitors called this planet by a different name. They called it Teos. "What does that mean?" asked Councillor Myra, her voice trembling slightly. "In the ancient tongue, it means the Forge of Nightmares," Luminos answered. His voice carried a weight that made several councillors shift uncomfortably. The progenitors classified it as a Class 12 death world. The highest danger rating in their system. The chamber erupted into chaos. Species began shouting questions. Others accessed their own databases frantically. Death worlds were rare, accounting for less than 1 in a million planets. They were places so hostile that life itself became weaponized just to survive. They established a quarantine beacon around the system, Luminos continued, his voice cutting through the noise. They left a detailed report. Let me read their conclusion. The hologram displayed text that translated into galactic standard. "We have observed the dominant species on Teos for 1,000 cycles. They call themselves humans. They are persistence hunters who exhaust their prey over days. They survive injuries that would kill any civilized being. Their pack bonding cannot be broken. They transform everything into weapons. They create beauty from violence and violence from necessity. If these creatures ever unify and achieve spaceflight, the galaxy will face a new apex predator. Permanent quarantine recommended." The silence that followed was deafening. James cleared his throat. All eyes turned back to him. He smiled, but there was something predatory in that smile that made several councillors step back. "The quarantine beacon failed 3 centuries ago," James said calmly. "We discovered it when we first left our solar system, but by then it was just ancient debris. We have been preparing for this moment ever since." He gestured around the chamber. The progenitors were right about one thing. Earth is a death world. It tried to kill us with predators, diseases, ice ages, volcanoes, and asteroid impacts. Everything on our planet wants us dead. And we are still here. James paused, letting his words sink in. But the progenitors were wrong about one thing. We did not come here as conquerors. We came seeking allies. Because Earth taught us that survival is easier when you work together. Counselor Vex stared at the human ambassador with new eyes. These were not primitive creatures seeking protection. These were apex predators offering friendship. The question was whether the galaxy was wise enough to accept. The council chamber remained frozen in shocked silence for several long moments. Then everyone started talking at once. Counselor Vex pulled up Earth's planetary data on his personal display, and his face went pale as he read the information. The gravity is 1.3 times galactic standard, he said slowly. Most of us would be crushed under that weight within hours. How do they even move? Counselor Myra accessed the atmospheric data. The oxygen levels are at 21%. That is toxic. Our species would suffer cellular damage from oxygen poisoning in that environment. And the temperature variations, they range from -80 to +50 degrees Celsius across different regions. Other counselors began reading through the data with growing horror. Earth had active tectonic plates that caused earthquakes capable of destroying entire cities. The planet experienced hurricanes with winds exceeding 300 kilometers per hour. Volcanoes erupted regularly, sometimes causing global climate changes. Ocean waves could reach 30 meters high during storms. The planet has experienced 5 mass extinction events, Luminos added quietly. Each one killed more than 70% of all life. And yet life always came back. Always adapted. Always became stronger. A counselor from the insectoid hive species clicked nervously. And humans evolved in this environment? They are the dominant species on a planet that actively tries to kill everything. Ambassador Carter nodded. Earth is our home. We did not choose it, but it chose us. It made us what we are. Luminos continued reading from the progenitor records. They observed early humans 2.5 million years ago. The report describes them as persistence hunters. They explain that humans lack the speed of predators or the strength of megafauna, but they have something more dangerous. They never stop. The archivist's voice took on an eerie quality as he read the ancient text. The progenitors watched humans hunt. They would track an animal for days, sometimes weeks. The prey would run until exhausted, and the humans would just keep walking. The animal would rest, and the humans would catch up. This cycle would repeat until the prey literally died from exhaustion and stress. The progenitors called it the most terrifying hunting method they had ever witnessed. Several counselors looked at James with new fear in their eyes. The report continues, Luminos said. Human bodies are redundant systems. They have 2 kidneys when one is sufficient. 2 lungs when one can sustain life. Their liver regenerates if damaged. Their bones repair themselves. Their skin forms scar tissue that is often stronger than the original flesh. They can survive blood loss that would kill other species. They can endure pain that would send most beings into fatal shock. Counselor Vex shook his head. But they are not strong. Our warriors are 3 times their size. The progenitors noted that as well, Luminos replied. They wrote that human strength is not in their muscles but in their minds. Humans turn everything into weapons. Rocks become hammers. Sticks become spears. They discovered fire and used it as a tool. They split atoms and turned it into bombs. The progenitors concluded that humans see the entire universe as a potential arsenal. The chamber grew quieter as the weight of this information settled over them. There is one more thing, Luminos said. The progenitors were most disturbed by human pack bonding. They wrote that humans bond with anything and everything. They bonded with wolves and turned them into dogs. They bonded with large prey animals and turned them into horses for riding. They kept predators as pets. They even bonded with plants and insects. The progenitors stated that this ability to form attachments was both humanity's greatest strength and their most dangerous trait. Colonel Thomas Reed stepped forward beside Ambassador Carter. He was a military man, and his bearing showed it. The progenitors saw us at our beginning. They saw us with stone tools and animal skins. They could not imagine what we would become. He gestured to a holographic display that showed Earth's current state. We now have 14 billion humans. We have 70 colony worlds. We have been in space for only 300 years, but our industrial capacity already rivals species that have been spacefaring for millennia. How is that possible? Demanded Counselor Myra. Colonel Reed smiled grimly. Because we spent 10,000 years fighting each other. We perfected warfare on a planet that was already a battlefield. We learned logistics feeding armies of millions. We learned strategy fighting wars across entire continents. We learned sacrifice because our planet taught us that survival requires sacrifice every single day. General Marcus Stone of the Zenthari Empire had been watching silently. He was the Council's supreme military commander, and he had led fleets in dozens of wars. Now he approached the human delegation with careful steps. "You understand what you are telling us," General Stone said quietly. "You are saying that humanity is the most dangerous species in the galaxy." Colonel Reed met his gaze without flinching. "No, General. We are saying that Earth made us dangerous because we had no choice. But we chose to come here in peace. That choice is what makes us different." Ambassador Carter added softly, "The progenitors feared what we might become. But they never asked what we might choose to be." The Council ordered a full investigation into human capabilities. Over the next 3 weeks, teams of scientists, military analysts, and cultural experts studied everything about humanity. What they discovered made the initial shock seem mild in comparison. Dr. Helen Wright stood before the Council Science Committee in a sterile white laboratory. Around her floated holographic displays of human anatomy. The alien scientists watched with a mixture of fascination and horror. "You asked why humans are difficult to kill," Dr. Wright began. "Let me show you. Our average body temperature is 37 degrees Celsius. This is hot enough to damage proteins in most galactic species. We maintain this heat by literally burning fuel inside every cell of our bodies. We call it metabolism." She pulled up an image of the human digestive system. "Our stomach produces acid with a pH of 1.5. This acid can dissolve metal. We need this because the food on Earth contains bacteria and toxins that would kill most species instantly. Our bodies are essentially chemical warfare facilities." A scientist from the aquatic Neric species made a disturbed gurgling sound. "How do you not poison yourselves?" "We do, constantly," Dr. Wright replied cheerfully. "Our liver filters toxins from our blood every second of every day. It can regenerate itself even if 70% is removed. Our kidneys do the same work as backup systems. We have built-in redundancy for almost everything." She changed the display to show the skeletal structure. "We have 206 bones. When they break, they heal themselves and often become stronger at the break point. Our skin is the largest organ. It repairs itself constantly. A wound that would be fatal to many species is just an inconvenience to us. We form scar tissue and continue functioning." The committee members shifted uncomfortably as she continued. "Our blood clots in minutes to seal wounds. We can lose up to 40% of our blood and survive with treatment. We can function with one lung, one kidney, and portions of our brain damaged. We are designed for survival at any cost." Counselor Vex interrupted. "But you are slow. You cannot outrun most predators. How did you survive on a death world?" Dr. Wright smiled. "We did not need to outrun them. We outlasted them. Humans are the best endurance runners in Earth's history. We can run for hours, even days if necessary. Our bodies cool through sweat, which allows us to regulate temperature while moving. Most Earth predators would overheat and die before we got tired." She pulled up ancient video records from Earth. "Our ancestors would chase animals under the hot sun. The animal would run fast and escape. Then it would rest. The humans would catch up. This would repeat for hours or even days. Eventually, the animal would be so exhausted it could not run anymore. It would sometimes die from stress and exhaustion before the humans even touched it." The committee sat in stunned silence. "We call it persistence hunting," Dr. Wright added. "It is the most patient and terrifying form of predation ever documented." Meanwhile, in another chamber, Captain Emma Foster presented military capabilities to the Council Defense Committee. General Marcus Stone watched with increasing concern as she displayed Earth's military structure. "Humanity has been at war for our entire recorded history," Captain Foster explained. "We have detailed military records going back 5,000 years. We have studied every type of warfare. Ground combat, naval warfare, air superiority, space battles, guerrilla tactics, siege warfare, psychological operations. We have manuals for everything." She showed images of Earth's conflicts. "We fought wars that killed millions. We developed weapons that could destroy our entire planet. We created strategies for fighting in deserts, jungles, mountains, oceans, and frozen wastelands. Earth taught us that any environment can be a battlefield." General Stone leaned forward. "Your technology is centuries behind ours. How do you plan to compete with advanced species?" Captain Foster's expression hardened. "General, technology is only part of warfare. The most important factors are will, adaptability, and numbers. Humans have 14 billion people. Our population is larger than most galactic species combined. Every human receives basic military training. In a crisis, we can mobilize billions of soldiers. She changed the display to show human industrial capacity. We have been in space for 3 centuries, but we already have 70 colony worlds. Our shipyards produce vessels at rates that exceed most established species. We do not have the best technology, but we have quantity. And quantity has a quality all its own. Another committee member asked, "What about tactics? Surely you cannot match species with thousands of years of space combat experience." Captain Foster smiled coldly. "We adapt faster than any species you have encountered. When we meet a new challenge, we study it, learn from it, and overcome it. Earth taught us that adaptation is survival. Every extinction event on our planet created new species that were better suited to survive. Humans are the ultimate result of that process." She pulled up historical records. When humans first encountered firearms, we changed all military tactics within 50 years. When we developed aircraft, we revolutionized warfare in 20 years. When we reached space, we developed zero-gravity combat doctrine in 10 years. We learn fast because on Earth, learning slow meant death. General Stone reviewed the data with growing unease. He had fought in wars across the galaxy. He had seen countless species and their military capabilities. But humans were different. They were not the strongest or the fastest. They were not the most advanced. But they had something more dangerous than any of that. They had the absolute refusal to give up. They had 10,000 years of practice in warfare. They had a population that could overwhelm through sheer numbers. And most terrifying of all, they had chosen to come in peace. The general realized something that chilled him. Humanity was offering friendship not because they were weak and needed protection. They were offering friendship because they were strong enough to choose peace. The question was whether the galaxy was wise enough to accept before humans decided to demonstrate just how dangerous they could be. The debate about humanity ended abruptly when the alarms started screaming across Council space. The Krath swarm had emerged from deep space and attacked the colony of New Haven. The news sent waves of panic through the Council chambers. The Krath were the nightmare that every civilized species feared. They were insect-like creatures that moved in billions, consuming everything in their path. They did not negotiate. They did not retreat. They simply devoured world after world, leaving nothing but bare rock behind. In the past 1,000 years, they had destroyed 4 to 7 colonies and killed over 2 billion beings. New Haven had 2 million inhabitants. The distress calls were desperate. The colony's defense fleet consisted of only 12 ships, and they were being overwhelmed within minutes. The Council scrambled to respond. 17 warships jumped to the system within 2 hours, the fastest response time in Council history. It was not fast enough. The Council fleet engaged the Krath swarm and immediately began taking casualties. The Krath fought with no regard for their own losses. For every Krath ship destroyed, 5 more appeared. Within the first hour, 6 Council ships were destroyed. The remaining fleet began a fighting retreat, trying to buy time for the colonists to evacuate. But there were too many Krath ships and not enough time. Then Battle Group Terror arrived. Admiral Robert Hayes commanded 12 human warships that jumped into the system exactly 6 hours after the first distress call. The Council observers expected the humans to assess the situation carefully and perhaps provide support fire while retreating. That was standard galactic military doctrine when facing the Krath. The humans did the opposite. They charged straight into the center of the Krath formation. "All ships, this is Admiral Hayes," his voice crackled across all frequencies. "We are going to save those people. I don't care what it costs. We hold the line here. No retreat. No surrender. Make Earth proud." The human ships hit the Krath fleet like a hammer. Their weapons were less advanced than Council technology, but they fired with a speed and aggression that shocked the observers. When ammunition ran low, human ships rammed Krath vessels, using their hulls as weapons. The Council liaison aboard the human flagship watched in disbelief as human marines prepared to board a Krath hive ship. "This is suicide," the liaison protested. "The Krath tear apart boarders in seconds." Captain Linda Harris checked her combat armor and smiled. "Then we will make those seconds count." The boarding pods launched. Human marines crashed into Krath ships and fought in zero-gravity combat that would have killed most species within minutes. The Krath were fierce fighters with natural armor and razor-sharp claws. But the humans fought with a ferocity that even the Krath had never encountered. Lieutenant David Miller's squad took heavy casualties in the first minutes. His team of 12 was reduced to 3, then 2, then just him. His armor was breached in 4 places. He had injuries that should have killed him. But he kept fighting. For 17 hours, Lieutenant Miller held a critical junction inside the Krath ship. He used weapons until they broke, then used his combat knife, then used debris as clubs. The Krath kept coming, and he kept killing them. His suit recorded everything. The Council observers watched in horror as this single human fought wave after wave of Krath warriors. When a rescue team finally reached him, Lieutenant Miller was barely conscious. He had lost massive amounts of blood. His left arm was broken. He had 3 cracked ribs and a punctured lung. His first words were not about his injuries. "Did my squad make it out?" he asked weakly. "Did we save the colony?" The humans employed tactics that violated every rule of civilized warfare. They fought in compartments flooded with radiation that would kill most species in minutes. When ships were crippled and the crew evacuated, human captains stayed behind to pilot their vessels as guided missiles into Krath formations. The frigate Indomitable took catastrophic damage from 3 Krath dreadnoughts. Captain Harris ordered the crew to evacuate, but she remained at the helm. The Council observers begged her to leave, but she refused. "Someone needs to steer this bird," she said calmly. She programmed the ship's failing engines for one final acceleration, aimed directly at the largest Krath mothership. Her last transmission before impact was simple: "From Earth, with love." The Indomitable struck the Krath mothership at full speed. The explosion destroyed the mothership and 15 surrounding Krath vessels. The loss of the mothership caused the Krath coordination to collapse. Their swarm began to fragment. The human fleet pressed the advantage. They showed no mercy and gave no quarter. They fought like the death world predators they were, and the Krath began to retreat. For the first time in recorded galactic history, the Krath swarm withdrew from a battle. They fled into deep space, leaving behind their destroyed ships and their prey unconsumed. New Haven was saved. Of the 2 million colonists, 1.9 million survived thanks to the evacuation time the humans bought with their lives. Battle Group Terror lost 4 ships and 3,000 Marines. Lieutenant Miller survived his injuries after extensive medical treatment. General Marcus Stone reviewed the battle recordings in silence. He had fought the Krath twice in his career. Both times, he had been forced to retreat. The humans had faced worse odds and won. He finally understood what the progenitors had feared. Humans were not just warriors. They were something far more dangerous. They were survivors who simply refused to die, and they would drag their enemies into the grave before admitting defeat. The general realized that humanity had just saved a council colony at tremendous cost. They had demonstrated loyalty and sacrifice. They had proven they were valuable allies. But he also realized that if humanity ever became an enemy, the galaxy would face a threat unlike anything it had ever known. The council chamber was packed with representatives from every species when Ambassador James Carter walked to the central platform. The Battle of New Haven had changed everything. The recordings of human Marines fighting impossible odds had spread across the galaxy. Everyone wanted to see these Death World creatures who had driven back the Krath swarm. The chamber was silent as James stood before 10,000 species. He looked tired. The battle had cost Earth 3,000 lives, and he had personally written letters to every family. But his voice was strong when he spoke. 3 weeks ago, you asked what humans could offer the galaxy, James began. You looked at us and saw primitive creatures from a backwater planet. You saw our short lifespans and fragile bodies. You wondered why you should accept us into your civilization. He paused, letting his words carry across the vast chamber. Now you have seen what we can do. You have seen us fight. You have seen us die. And I know what you are thinking. You are wondering if we are too dangerous to trust. Nervous murmurs rippled through the assembled species. James had voiced the question everyone was afraid to ask. Let me tell you about Earth, James continued. Our planet tried to kill us every single day. Ice ages froze our ancestors. Predators hunted us. Diseases plagued us. Volcanoes and earthquakes destroyed our homes. Asteroids fell from the sky. Everything on our world wanted us dead. He gestured around the chamber. But we survived. We did not just survive. We thrived. We looked at wolves that wanted to eat us, and we turned them into dogs. We looked at wild horses that could kill us with a kick, and we rode them. We looked at fire that burned our skin, and we used it to cook food and warm our homes. Earth taught us to take the things that wanted to kill us and make them our allies. The chamber remained silent. Every being present was listening carefully. The progenitors left a warning about us, James said. They called Earth the Forge of Nightmares. They said we would become apex predators if we ever reached the stars. They were right about one thing. We are dangerous. We are very dangerous. He let that admission hang in the air for a moment. Several counselors shifted uncomfortably. But the progenitors missed something important, James continued, his voice growing warmer. They watched us hunt. They watched us fight. They watched us survive. But they never asked what we would choose to do with that strength. They assumed we would become conquerors. They were wrong. James pulled up a holographic display showing the Battle of New Haven. We could have run from the Krath. We could have let New Haven fall and preserved our fleet. But we didn't. We charged into battle knowing we might die because 2 million innocent people needed help. That is what Earth really taught us. Survival is easier when you work together. Counselor Myra stood up, her voice trembling. But how can we trust you? You have shown us that humanity is the most dangerous species in the galaxy. What happens if you decide we are your enemy? James looked directly at her. That is your choice, not ours. We came here offering friendship. We have proven that friendship with our blood. 3,000 humans died saving people they had never met. Lieutenant David Miller fought for 17 hours to hold a position that protected colonists he would never know. Captain Linda Harris gave her life to destroy a Krath mothership. He gestured to Colonel Thomas Reed, who stood nearby. Earth has 14 billion humans. We have 70 colonies. We have industrial capacity that grows every year. We have 10,000 years of military experience. Yes, we are dangerous. But we choose to use that danger to protect others, not to harm them. Archivist Luminos rose from his position, his crystalline form glowing brightly. The progenitors called Earth Taos, the Forge of Nightmares. They feared what humanity would become. But I propose we rename it. Let Earth be known as Taosfal, which in the ancient tongue means the Forge of Guardians. The chamber erupted in discussion. Species argued back and forth. Some were afraid. Others were grateful for what humans had done at New Haven. The debate lasted for hours. Finally, the council speaker called for a vote. All in favor of granting humanity full council membership with highest honors. The vote was not unanimous, but it was overwhelming. 8,300 species voted yes. Only 1,700 voted no or abstained. Humanity is hereby granted full council membership, the speaker announced. Welcome to the galactic community. James felt relief wash over him, but he kept his expression neutral. This was only the beginning. General Marcus Stone approached the human delegation after the ceremony. You realize everything has changed now, he said quietly. The galaxy will never see humans as weak again. But they will also never stop watching you. Colonel Reed nodded. We understand, General. But we did not come here to be feared. We came here to find our place among the stars. And what place is that? The General asked. James answered before Reed could speak. Wherever someone needs help. Wherever someone needs protection. Earth made us survivors. We choose to help others survive too. Over the following months, human ships joined Council defense fleets across the galaxy. Wherever they went, they brought their death world toughness and their unexpected compassion. They shared their medical knowledge, their industrial techniques, and their military tactics. But the galaxy never forgot what humanity truly was. They were the children of Taos, forged in the nightmare of a death world. They were persistence hunters who never gave up. They were pack bonders who turned enemies into friends. They were the species that looked at a hostile universe and decided to make it better. In the dark reaches of space, the Krath swarm retreated to their hidden worlds. Their hive mind processed the battle recordings over and over. They learned a new word from their stolen databases. A word the progenitors had used 50 million years ago. Taos. The swarm had never known fear before. But now they understood why the ancient civilization had placed a quarantine around that terrible world. The humans had finally come to the stars, and the galaxy would never be the same. Some species celebrated. Others worried. But everyone agreed on one thing. Humanity had arrived, and they were here to stay.